thank you very much for this invitation. I used to think that Jerusalem was the prettiest place in the world. I still do, but Punta del Este gives us some serious competition. And what do I want to do today? I want to basically showcase Israel, the startup nation. I want to showcase Israel's top university, and I want to do that based on example. So I don't want to bore you with statistics, numbers, international ranking, etc. I want to give you examples of some things that you've already used, and perhaps some products, companies, ideas, technologies that you will use in the future. And if some of these interest you, may I suggest that you either contact me or Dr. Pablo Kieselstein, the director of our South American enterprise. So this is the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. We're Israel's oldest top university. We're roughly built on the American model university, which means lots of professors and each is utterly independent. And these are what we call our triple Fs, our formidable founding fathers. Okay, so these people came together. You recognize, of course, Albert Einstein, Sigmund Freud, Martin Buber, and Chaim Weizmann. These were the four founders of our university, and we tried to walk in their huge footsteps. And some more famous alumni and graduates in the last 10 years or 11 years, 7 of our faculty or students have won a Nobel Prize, which is a good statistics. But what I want to talk today about is not basic research, but application. How do we take those basic science and turn that into something that the public can enjoy? Because part of the public, the Israeli taxpayer, is our founder, okay? So it's important for us to show them that we're doing something that is useful. We're not just stuck in an ivory tower. So I want to give you examples from several of our campuses, and just to show you, this is what we do at the Hebrew University. So I'll start with computer science. I guess that's a natural starting point for Israel, the startup nation. And I'm mostly going to focus just on one area of computer science, which is vision. So Professor Amnon Shashua, it might not be known to you. His company is, this is Mobileye. If you have a brand new Mercedes or BMWs or Volvos, it's pre-installed. It doesn't actually say made in Israel, but it is, okay? This company basically has a video camera that analyzes everything in front of you while you might be playing with your cell phone, talking to the passenger, changing stations on the radio. It never loses focus. Okay? It will alert you if you're coming too close to a vehicle, if you're swaying between the lanes, if you're approaching a pedestrian, and it will alert you. Okay? 85% of the world market is held by this company. They recently raised $400 million on an evaluation of $1.5 billion. And the amazing thing, you can still have lectures by Professor Amnon Shashua at the Hebrew University. Okay? He still teaches. And if you think that he would basically call it quits after establishing a company for $1.5 billion, no, here's another company. This is called Arkin. What Arkin does is to dramatically enable someone who is visually impaired to recognize things. So there's a camera on your glass that all you need to do is to point your finger at something, and a small computer that is connected to the camera will actually recognize what that is. It will read out loud. It will recognize if the traffic light is green or red. It will recognize pictures of people that you've already inserted inside. It will read labels. It basically does everything. You can already buy these all over the world. Here's another example, Professor Shmuel Peleg. We're surrounded by cameras. We're taking pictures and videos of us all the time. But the problem is, who has time to watch all the video that's taken of us, right? If a video is taken for 24 hours, how long does it take to watch that video? The answer is simple, 24 hours. So what Professor Peleg invented in a company called BriefCam, which won the Wall Street Journal's Best Technology Award, he invented a way to provide a synopsis of video. Okay, so the video on the right, which you can barely see, is not fast forwarding, but it's basically taking all the events that are taking place and putting them one on top of the other. So if you want to look at a video that was recorded for 24 hours, you need less than 20 minutes to do that. And you ask yourself, is this thing actually used? The answer is certainly. This was the technology that enabled the FBI and the CIA to capture the bombers of the Boston Marathon, okay? It enabled them to do that only 2 weeks after the event because they didn't need to put 150 agents looking at hours upon hours of video data, okay? Now, if we can already look at events, perhaps we might want to look at the unusual events, okay? Professor Daphne Weinstein enabled using Bayesian statistics and a sophisticated algorithm to look at things that are unusual. And what you can see over here, if a car is going according to the right direction, it's not picked up as an unusual event. But if someone is doing a U-turn, if someone is coming out of a parking spot, etc., that is automatically recognized as an unusual event. Again, clearly you can see that agencies all over the world, you might be interested if one of your employees is doing something unusual. If in the airports, security agencies all over the world, this is useful. And last but not least, if the video data that you're capturing is of low resolution, Professor Anan Fatal's wavelet technology can significantly enhance that. You're actually using his technologies. You probably didn't realize this. If you buy Adobe Photoshop, that's the technology that is used. Have a look at what happened to this flower. And what we're looking for right now is to actually implement this technology in video data. Okay, so again, interest from lots of manufacturers of televisions, etc. Okay, so of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg of computer science, but the Hebrew University is a university. University comes from universal, not a one-trick pony. We try to cover lots of different fields, and this is material science. One of our leading chemists in Israel, Professor Uri Banin. We're familiar with several different light bulbs. We're familiar with incandescent light bulbs, not used so much anymore. We're familiar with fluorescent light bulbs, and we're also familiar with LED. That's exactly the flash that you have on your iPhone or Android phone, etc. The problem with the LED light bulbs is that their light is very white. Now, if you want to use this incredibly efficient light to power your greenhouses to grow plants, you know what's going to happen to the plants? They will die because the light is not sufficiently broad. So what people try to do is to broaden the spectrum, but you know what happens? They lose efficiency. So what's the point of using LEDs in the first place, okay? In comes Professor Uri Banin with an investment from Merck of $4 million, a company called Q-Light. What it does is using quantum dot technology to broaden the spectrum of LEDs without any loss of resolution. You're not only going to find this in greenhouses in the very near future, it's going to power your LCD screens on your computer, your cell phone, everything, okay? More efficient, broader spectrum. Now here's another nice idea. This is coming from Professor Oded Shosayov. When material science, when chemists are asked to provide a solution, what they tend to do is they go to the lab and see what sort of chemicals can I generate in order to make this, to provide an answer. Professor Shosayov has a different approach. He basically looks at nature and see how did nature answer that question, okay? And if we're interested in taking waste products, for example, from the paper industry, pulp, cellulose, it's all around us, pay you money to take their pulp waste away. They will pay you for that, okay? But what can you do with that cellulose? Well, Professor Shosayov has a way of taking that cellulose and making it incredibly elastic. On the right, you see normal cellulose, which is plastic. It means when you apply pressure and you release the pressure, the material changes its shape. On the left side, you see cellulose that was made in such a way that it is incredibly elastic. It has been rubber and far more elastic. So I'm not saying that next year you're going to find this in your Nike shoes, but maybe the year after that. How did he do this? He added to this the most elastic component known in nature. And that is the protein found in fleas. Fleas are able to jump more than any other creature relative to their size because they have a protein that when you compress it 100-fold and you release the compression, it goes back exactly the same shape. He genetically engineered that into that cellulose to make it, again, one of the most elastic components known. Another idea that we have is this is a joint venture by Professor Belkin and Agranat. What we have on the top over there is you can see bacteria that luminesce when they are in contact with explosives. Why would this be useful? You spread these bacteria on a field, and then you can use simple scanners to detect where you have landmines, which is a problem all over the world. Again, this is all utterly safe, no chemicals, etc. You don't need to send soldiers into the field. The bacteria do the work for you. And last but not least, one of the leading companies in the world to print on glass. Diptech is based on nanotechnology from Professor Shlomo Magdassi. This is not painting on the glass. This goes inside the glass, so it is virtually resistant to anything that you can give on it. And you can see all over the world sort of buildings, beautiful buildings with printed glass. Whatever you can print on your computer at home, it can print on this glass, and again, utterly and completely resistant. And the last thing, this is very, very new. This is basically a brand new way to make memory for computers that it does not require constant sort of battery. This is coming from Professor Yossi Paltiel using chiral-based materials. Again, I don't want to go into the details, but this is a very promising new way to provide computer memory. Medicine, unfortunately, while we're all very interested in applications and high-tech industry, we're also very concerned about our health, and we at the Hebrew University take this to heart. Clearly, Professor Marta Weinstock-Rosin produced the leading drug in the world for the treatment of dementia for Alzheimer's. I wish all of us never to use this, but unfortunately, it sells for over $1.3 billion a year, which means that many people use this. The reason that I specify that number is not to impress you that she is a very wealthy person. The reason that I specify this very large number is to show the impact that this research has all over the world, because it's not bought just by the residents of Jerusalem or Israel, it's bought all over the world. One of the leading drugs in the world for the treatment of ovarian cancer comes from Professor Chezi Barenholz. The first time in which drugs were encapsulated in lipid droplets and liposomes in order to decrease their toxicity. And one of the leading treatments for Parkinson's. We're all getting healthier, which means that we're going to die older. That sounds like a good thing, but unfortunately, diseases such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer are going to become far more prevalent. What do you do against that? The leading treatment is deep brain stimulation, inserting electrodes in your mind, in your brain, and basically the difference between the two individuals, they're the same person. The difference between them is 2 weeks and deep brain stimulation. The person on the right is before the treatment, the person on the top 2 weeks after the treatment. If I were not to show you the two videos, you would specify that the individual on the top is perfectly healthy. Okay? Deep brain stimulation is by far the best treatment for anyone suffering from Parkinson's. Gum disease, again, used unfortunately throughout the world. Despite the fact that I tell my kids to brush their teeth as frequently as possible, they might not do that. And one of the best ways to combat that is to insert a chip. It's called perio chip. What the chip does is it releases antibiotics inside your gum at the site of infection, and this does a dramatic enhancement for anything like gingivitis and other gum diseases. It's used throughout the world. It's a combination of work that was done by dentists, pharmacists, and clinicians. And last but not least, I want to leave you with a good taste. I don't know if you realize this, but none of you ate cherry tomatoes 30 years ago. And the reason is that Professor Chaim Rabinovich only invented them 25 years ago. Okay? So all the cherry tomatoes that are sold all over the world, doesn't matter the variety or the size, are all a product of Professor Chaim Rabinovich and Nachum Kedar. The trick here was not to get them small, but to increase the shelf life. And what Israel does nowadays is, instead of actually selling the tomatoes, which for a country that does not have a lot of water means to ship water overseas, what we do is we sell the seeds. And I don't know if you realize this, but tomato seeds per weight are more expensive than gold, okay? Because you don't take them to the field and throw them like this. Every single seed has a 99% success of becoming a full-grown plant, okay? If you don't like tomatoes, don't worry, peppers are here as well. 50% of the peppers that are sold in Europe were bred by Professor Jonathan Arkin. Again, he can provide you peppers with whatever variety and color you want. These are not GMOs. We use sophisticated genetics in order to know which pepper strains to cross. But these are not genetically engineered because we realize that in Europe that's a very, very big no-no. Another effort that we have is to introduce a very good vegetable protein source to the third world. Garbanzo beans are by far the best, chickpeas, much, much better than soya because there's no phytoestrogens. And what this does is it can provide a very good protein source where places in the world that are drought-riven, that do not have a lot of water. You've just finished growing your peppers. Now you want to grow something else in your field. What do? You need to sterilize the field. How are you going to do that? People used to put chemicals on the field in order to kill everything, but then you need to remove the chemicals. A much better solution is called soil solarization, again used throughout the world. Put plastic sheets of paper on the ground. They're black. You get a local greenhouse. It heats the ground. Everything is killed. The moment that it is, remove the plastic. You have perfectly safe, perfectly clean land that you can use to sow whatever new seeds you have. And last but not least, people are now eating more and more fish because they realize it's a very good protein source. And the problem with fish is that we can no longer expect the oceans to provide us with catch. Nowadays, 50% of the fish that are sold worldwide are not actually fished in the oceans, but rather cultivated in aquaculture. The problem with aquaculture is that you need water. Places that are not rich with water, what are they going to do? So Professor Jaap van Rijn invented a zero discharge system for growing fish. Okay? The amount of water in those ponds does not need to be replaced the moment that you harvested the fish. Because what he has is a circularizing system in which bacteria remove all the excrement, all the waste from the fish, so you're not losing any water whatsoever. So you can actually grow fish everywhere, in the middle of the Sahara Desert or any other place that is short on water. And collagen, okay? If I were to dry myself, remove all liquid from my body, 20% of my body would be made of collagen, okay? It's the most abundant protein in the body. Most of us are familiar with collagen from movie actors that basically insert it in their lips in order to look sexier, right? I wonder if they realize that the collagen that they're inserting in their lips comes from dead people, cadavers. That is the most common source of collagen today. Now, it's not only for beauty. You also use collagen in order to repair your joints and ligaments, etc. Professor Oded Shosayov invented a way to introduce the genes of collagen in tobacco leaves, and the tobacco leaves produce perfect human collagen that you can actually buy today. It's on the market. It is approved by the Federal Drug Administration. You can use it for aesthetic treatments, for other medical treatments all over the world. Okay, so no need to resort for dead bodies in order to get collagen. And of course, the last thing that Israel is known throughout the world is efficient use of water. We invented drip irrigation. It's used throughout the world in order to minimize evaporation and water reclamation. Israel reclaims 80% of its wastewater, 80%, 80. Country number 2 in the world is Spain, 20%. Okay? So water is becoming scarce, perhaps in this part of the world. That's hard to believe, but in other places in the world, fresh water is an important commodity. We have technologies to reclaim that. So I hope what I did is to show you the tip of the iceberg of what the Hebrew University is, Israel's top university, some of the things that basically helped us become the startup nation. Thank you very much.